Next up is Mr. White.
Thank you. I have a prop that I'd like to bring out here to begin with. But before I do that, I would like to say an expression of gratitude for facilitating my being here today. It was late. People stretched a little bit to make sure that we could do this. And I would also like to say that this delivery is going to be different. The museum here kindly let me borrow one of their artifacts.
I'll do it.
And I'd like to use that for some emphasis here. Now, who here skis or snowboards? Hold up your hands.
Mr. White, if you don't use the microphone, I'm not in compliance with state law, so if you could...
Is that better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have three. Now, I'm old enough to have begun on one of these, but I'm pretty old. And I've been wearing protective equipment for a long time. Of our three skiers here, do you wear helmets? 1, 2, everybody wears helmets. That's good. This equipment is here as a prop because this is an illustration of where the sport was when the Ski Safety Act was written. It may have been just a little tiny bit ahead of that, but it was a whole different sport and a whole different world than it is now. Now, there was advanced materials sent, including this presentation that we're looking at here. There was a number of links to videos in there, and there was a fair amount of attachments. Can I have a show of hands as far as who has read that material?
Mr. White, you know, if you could present, I'm not really used to having people poll the commission. We're here to hear what you have to say, but...
Okay. I'll do my best. I have a autotelic personality that doesn't necessarily enable me to be the most compliant. I'm sorry for that.
That's okay. I'll keep reminding you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So the graphic that you're looking at here really is a metaphor for the cover letter. And bottom line up front, I'm here to illustrate the fact that we have a law-breaking problem on the ski slopes, to reveal an enforcement gap associated with that law-breaking problem. We've done extensive surveys and interviews to validate the legitimacy of that, to identify the stakeholders and beneficiaries in that, and to furthermore have a suggested pathway and seek commitment. Next slide, please. This is an illustration which is way, way too busy, but fast forward through the whole thing. There's an annual event at ski areas usually called the pond skim, last day of the year. They build a pond at the bottom of the mountain, people ski down, they try and get across the pond of water with their skis and their snowboards. It's a lot of fun. It usually begins the night before with a big party and continues the morning of with a big party. This particular event here happened in April of this year at Copper Mountain. Copper Mountain introduced something relatively new to the pond skim, and that is a terrain park built associated with the pond skim at the bottom of the mountain. People ski down fast. They jump from kickers. They do inverted aerials. They do aerials into the pond. There's a whole lot of things that happen there. The park is surrounded by public, kind of like the parks in the middle here where the ski is. The public is around the places where you all are sitting. And the public are basically endangered through this. And in this particular circumstance, the image is a little hard to understand, but there's an upside-down skier there. He went off the kicker and landed upside down in the crowd. He was identified as being intoxicated. There's a number of law-breaking occurrences there, recklessness, intoxication, and a terrain park that was built in a dangerous configuration. The perpetrator was charged, the police were called, They arrived an hour and a half late to the scene. There was no legitimate alcohol content measurement that could be taken at the time. Eventually, there was a guilty plea. The perpetrator got off light. Now, amongst the videos that I sent, did I send you the video about 5.5-year-old Elise Johnson from northern Wyoming? Yes?
Again, Mr. White, if you send it to us, we've reviewed it. I'm just uncomfortable having you polling commissioners for what they've reviewed or not.
I'm trying to gauge where I can move quickly and where I need to linger. So thank you. So we can go on to the next slide. People have seen Elise, they know the story. This here is a Colorado map of the ski areas, and what it shows in a nutshell is a couple of big red circles which indicate the places where the law enforcement officials rebuffed multiple opportunities to be interviewed or to participate in the sampling, and, well, it wasn't sampling, it was an extensive measurement of what happens on the ski slope with respect to law enforcement. The green indicators at Monarch, Vail Beaver Creek, at Eldora, and at Snowmass represent places where law enforcement is on the slope in some fashion or other to make sure that ski safety laws are sustained and recklessness endangerments are minimized. The graphic neglects law enforcement officials from U.S. Forest Service who are sprinkled here and there in a fashion that is not methodical but is somewhat contributing to the enforcement. They're occasionally on the slope, but they have no authority to do anything on the slope. I'll take questions for that later on. Next slope. Next, please. This is a representation of what I and my group see as the vision of the future. We see families, we see safe people on the slopes, we see essentially growth and prosperity in the business. We would like for this to happen, but there are barriers in place of this happening. Next slide, please. This is an indication of the commitment and only a small sampling from the advocacy group that I represent here today. Now, the letter from Horst is too small to read. I have a handout here that I would like to distribute. Is that allowed?
Yes, that's fine.
Sorry about the moment to get this done here.
Easy, wow.
Somebody can take this and pass it on. I appreciate that. Thank you. Horst Abraham is a Ski Hall of Famer. He's part of our group. I've highlighted different sections of what he says here, but bottom line, he's saying the intent of our advocacy group is to engage various entities, of which CPW is one, to help to generate a robust dialogue resulting in improved accident prevention methodologies. I enthusiastically support the efforts of this group and hope you'll join with us to keep the sports we treasure for all involved safe and enjoyable as possible. It doesn't say so here, but Horst is a professor. He's in his mid-70s, he's working strong, and he's in Singapore right now. Next slide, please. Stakeholders, very quickly stepping through this, we move from the top left where we indicate CPW, that is your logo there, is that correct? Top left?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And this is a direct quote from the interview work that we've done with respect to CPW. Basically, CPW see that the U.S. Forest Service has more duty and is likely to be a stakeholder that would possibly take more action. And then below that, we have the U.S. Forest Service's logo and what they say about it. And they believe that the matter is for the ski industry rather than themselves. Then there's a little arrow that takes us to Colorado Ski Country USA, who is a trade group. And I've underlined their primary functions are concentrated in marketing, public policy, and public relations. That's what they're about. Do I have anything more to say on that? Yes, bottom left, what we have here is an indication of the law enforcement agencies which are active, and God bless them for that. I've had extensive conversations and face-to-face with these people, and they've got some really good contributions to make. Upper right, we have NSP, that means National Ski Patrol. I linked their mission. That mission reads really well, but in fact, Ski Patrol are not out there to keep you safe. They're out there to put you on that toboggan and apply CPR and emergency first aid and get you to the medical center. That's what they do. So they're not there to help keep you safe. Beneficiaries, next slide, please. This is the family experience that we all esteem and love. These young children and the mother associated with them belong safe on the mountain, and they're being endangered through a gap in enforcement. Next slide, please. This sounds outrageous, doesn't it? That there's 600,000 accidents a year. This has come from Silver Star Mountain. It comes from a Brit that they nickname as Griff, who's tough, no-nonsense manager of Ski Patrol there. This is all facts and data founded. There's no doubt about this information, and we've validated this several different ways. Next, please. I need to skip through that slide, but please pay attention to the trend that is indicated there with respect to injuries associated with collisions. Skip that next slide, please. With that, I indicate here a slide. I'm out of order. Can we back up one? Yeah. All right. This is the terrain park at the bottom of Copper Mountain for the pond skim, where the accident occurred that created injuries and resulted in someone eventually being charged and filed. Okay? All the hoo-ha about that was to do with the accident and how bad it was, and somebody really got hurt there, and the police showed up late to the scene. I'm an engineer. I understand mechanics. I understand physical domains. I taught skiing for 9 years at Telluride. I know this world. That pond skim terrain park has inherent dangers built into it. You can see how close the crowd is to the perimeter there. There's too much chance that those people will become hurt with an accident, and that did indeed happen. Next slide, please.
Mr. White, we're at 12 minutes, so if you could kind of
wrap up.
Well, wrap up and get to your ask, I think would be the way I would describe it.
All right. Well, I think we're, let's just skip ahead here to keep on skipping. All right, here's where we go. This is our ask. I have another prop. Can I bring it out?
Please.
In monitoring data that comes from both the ski industry and CPW, we identify the number of participants associated with your domains. The ski industry in Colorado has about 12 million visitor population through the winter season. CPW has a very close to the same number through the 12 months a year. About the same size as those two balloons right there. Now, I don't have a balloon to illustrate this, but I would say this, that the amount of attention given by CPW towards the ski industry as opposed to everything else, and all those other things are very legitimate. I mean, wildlife, hunting, fishing, ecology, all of those things are perfectly legitimate, and I esteem them as well. But Nonetheless, there's a tremendous imbalance in the amount of effort that's being put there. If I got it right, there's 874 full-time equivalents in this organization. Is that right?
It sounds about right.
Yeah, and $174 million annual budget. Is that about right?
It's actually a little higher.
Okay, and how much of that, those two things, would be devoted towards the ski industry?
I don't think we know that, do we, Director? I would agree with your general assumption that it's not a large number.
Small number. So my suggested action is this, that there be a summit conference convened that would involve this organization and a representative or two. I've named a couple up there that seem like the folks. The U.S. Forest Service, Brian Farabee, he's received copies of all this documentation. He's the top dog in this region. This region covers a broad area, but it is the place where ski areas get their land and they get their authorization to do their business, okay? Chris Johnson is the director of the Colorado Sheriffs or the County Sheriffs of Colorado. He's a focal point for that entire organization. He could be functional at this. I spoke with Chris about that. He suggested that James Van Beek, who is the sheriff from Eagle County, might be a better person. Dr. Dan Gregory, who is the founder and president of the Snow Sports Safety Foundation. That is a nonprofit that's been working for 10 years to help address the problem of unsafe ski slopes. And I would suggest a ski industry representative and Colorado Liquor Control Board. I spoke with Colorado Liquor Control Board, and while we have lots of bars at 12,000 feet that close at the end of the ski day, the only way down from those bars is to ski or snowboard, and if you're intoxicated, you're breaking the law. Now, Broncos football games have a way of solving that. At the end of the third quarter, that's it, last call. Am I right? Thank you. So, with that, I'll take questions.
Commissioners, questions or comments? Commissioner Bray.
Sir, you are a very entertaining speaker. I'll give you that.
Thank you for that.
I struggle to see what the relevance of CPW is to you. I don't deny you have a major issue. I'm not denying that at all. I really struggle to see where our agency fits in on this.
May I?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Robert, this agency is authorized under Statute 33 of the Colorado statutes, is that correct?
Yes.
And Article 44 of that statute, does anybody know what that is? That's the Colorado Ski and Safety Act. Now, it may have been oddly placed. Nonetheless, it is under the auspices of this organization to some extent or other.
Commissioner Vigil.
Well, in my opinion, and to use a skiing analogy, your ask is way out of bounds to our mission statement, and we just can't do that. We're not a big enough agency to cover ski slopes. I mean, if there's a wildlife incident, somebody poaching while they're skiing, well, yes, we will show up. But we can't go and patrol the bars and the drunks.
Absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree, and I would never advocate that, Jim. I am not at all advocating even that we put the Gestapo out there in the ski slopes. It's not about that. There are solutions that are possible if you get about this many people in a room, in the right people in the right room for 2 days. You'll come out of that room with solutions that are workable, that are economical, that are not going to be burdensome to someone. But the fact remains, when I interviewed one of the police chiefs that was responsible for the domain of a ski area and asked about alcohol on the slopes, he said, well, what would I cite them for? And so I read the part out of the Ski Safety Act, and he said to me, that's Title 33. We're not responsible for Title 33. That's fish and game. So do you mean to say that you expect game wardens to go up there and do that? He says, well, yeah, technically, yeah. Do I characterize the understanding that exists or misunderstanding that exists? I don't mean to be adversarial. Please, I'm intense. I told you I was autotelic, and that creates a different demeanor.
Other commissioners' comments or questions? Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. White. Question, is your ask, if you were to summarize that, is I have written down, the ask is to attend a summit conference or a summit conference convene on behalf of ski slope and area or ski area safety?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the ask, that CPW would attend such conference?
Further, somebody needs to stand up as the host for that. Now, it doesn't mean to say they have to take full responsibility and hire more people and put them out on the slope to police, but it does mean they're a focal point. And it seems to me that the owners of the statute law would be the logical focal point. I've already had other people point in your direction. I know you're not used to this. However, someone of stature calling a meeting like this will generate attendance. That's what I'm looking for.
Commissioners, other comments, questions for Mr. White? Well, I suppose we should have some discussion here. I'm a little lost. Mr. White, I've thought a lot about this. I know you put a lot of effort into this. I've seen a lot more than the other commissioners just because of my role. And one of the things that just struck me is we've just gone through a very arduous 3-year process with the legislature. And as part of that, we got a lot of feedback, not just from our user groups, but from the legislature and what they wanted us focused on. And there's 10 items in that bill that came through, and there's nothing about skiing in there. And in addition to that, it just feels a little bit outside of our mission. But one of the things I also feel a little bit is that you're in front of the wrong group here. I really feel like this is something the legislature would have to deal with, right? Your gap analysis, I completely understand. But for us to suddenly go out now to take on skiing, to organize a conference, I feel like we'd be going beyond the mission that we very clearly got from the state legislature last year. So, I think we can take this under advisement and think about it. Particularly, I think it was very helpful that what you asked. I thought what you were going to ask us for was to become the ski patrol, and I think we would have clearly said no. Understanding what you're asking for is a meeting. I'd like to take that under advisement and think about it. As far as, but I would tell you that I really feel like the forum for you would be in the legislature as opposed to in front of us.
May I?
Absolutely. Please respond.
The legislature developed the Ski Safety Act at the time that ski and boot were in existence. And it took a long time to develop that. And the only reason that it exists right now is because of the ski lobby. The ski lobby, the ski areas wrote the thing. The legislature's tweaked it a little bit. The ski lobby has rewritten amendments to it as well. They've added in things like terrain parks that are natural terrain now. People create these things with bulldozers. You take part-time help and you send them out there with a bulldozer and you make a terrain park. They're not engineered. They're patently unsafe. I taught skiing for 9 years. I ended up with a fractured pelvis in a terrain park while leading a class. They shouldn't be in existence. However, I'm not here to say the industry shouldn't be in existence. This is part of the lifeblood of Colorado. We would not have Colorado the way it is today without the ski industry. So I'm not about slamming the ski industry, but the legislative pursuit of differences, I think, is not meaning to be disrespectful. I think that's folly. There is enough law written, there's enough forces out there, they just have to prioritize their attention towards family values. That's what this is about. This is about taking care of, can you back up to the slide that shows the family there?
That's fine, Laura.
I appreciate you indulging
You can
me.
find the slide. Commissioner Hauser, did you have a comment too?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. White. I'm sort of here to struggling a little bit with this because as a skier, as a backcountry skier and otherwise, I sympathize, I empathize, I recognize what you've brought to us. And there's probably something there, whether it's an interagency conversation. I think it's a little bit of a kind of a who's on first and how do you tackle this? And to Commissioner Bray and Vihil's comments, I think what we're struggling with is our jurisdiction and sort of our mission and how to play in this. So I'm not sure we're the starting point, whether or not we're a cooperative organization, would be one that I think would be worth discussing. But mostly I just, I would say thank you for your passion around something and probably moving a boulder up a hill and trying to figure out how to connect those dots. So from that regard, I certainly respect your intent, your effort, your travel and your time. And certainly if we can take it under advisement and maybe put our heads together and think a little bit about it, and whether or not it's this agency or making sure that we point you in the right direction or a better direction, I think would be our obligation at a minimum.
May I?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Carey, it's actually more like moving a boulder up a raging river with a waterfall in it.
Commissioner Garcia, I think you had a comment.
I'm a lawyer, so I went right to Title 33. And Title 33 is the Ski Safety Act, Skier Safety Act, is all about the duties of passengers, operators, ski area operations, and skiers. Nowhere in that act do I see anything that's directed at this commission or at this division. Is that fair?
There isn't something written in the act that says CPW must put their officers on the slope. There's nothing written in the act that says Colorado sheriffs must be on the slope. Nor is there anything written in the act that says police must be on the slope or liquor control board on the slope. But those are all stakeholders in this, sir. I don't mean to be disrespectful with my tone. But the fact remains somebody has to stand up as taking leadership in this, and it is not going to be the ski industry. They deny the existence of the problem. And for good reasons. If we confess that people smoke dope and ride chairlifts and drink on the hill and there's recklessness and there's danger out there, then what happens to this balloon? What happens to that balloon?
I fully understand, sir.
Commissioners, Mr. White, I appreciate it. We will take it under advisement, but I have got to move on to some other stuff.
Thank you.
I appreciate you traveling out here. I appreciate all the effort you put into it. And like I say, I've seen the full extent of that.
Thank you for the indulgence of your extra time here and my theatrics.
Well, it's always good to spice up the meeting, so I appreciate that. Okay, if you want
may
to...
I continue to submit thoughts and afterthoughts from this?
Absolutely.
Would I send them to who?
You can send them to, we have a general commissioner's email, as I recall, Director. My email's up on the website. You can send it to me, however you'd like.
John Howard, you will hear from me. Thank you.
I imagine I will. Thank you, Mr. White.
There are some parents here that have children. We're driving to Houston. We can't take the balloon, so help yourself.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put this back in the museum.